We are in our last, in the second session, assembly. I think now we need to be very precise. Something 3 minutes, really. Okay, Turkey, you want to be the first? Okay, go.
If it's possible.
Go.
Thank you very much. Okay. Hi. In the previous session, I already told that I was very disappointed. I expected my allies to condemn ISIS terrorism and to express their condolences, but NATO failed to make a joint statement, a political statement, which was a very superficial political statement. And even if NATO cannot fulfill of doing this, how can NATO can compete and can defeat a terrorist organization like ISIS? So that's why I decided to take everything into my own hands, and I summoned my chief of staff and I told him that the Turkish army now when I'm talking to you is now in Al-Bashika and fighting with ISIS. Moreover, Turkish army again crossed the Syrian border, and now we are securing the Jarablus pocket enclave so that we are going to defeat ISIS. Let me tell my European friends, I have a message for you. Our borders are opened. Our migrant agreement with European Union is suspended. I really hope that you're going to enjoy the new tourists that they are going to come from Turkey to European Union, and just don't forget to take a selfie with them before the explosions. Thank you.
1 minute.
Please.
What does NATO say to this?
I think NATO will talk at the end.
NATO failed
now?
to make a political statement. Even the fact that we told our American friends, and they agreed with us, that they should mention that they should express their condolences for the two attacks, one against the 32 Turkish soldiers and the second against the Ankara bombing,
Can I
and
just
they
say something?
failed to do so.
It's
So
okay.
we warned everyone, we shut down the country. Thank you very
We
much.
want US now to hear after England and then Israel and then NATO. Yes, US. Eric. We wait. You can talk. Oh, that's what.
No voice.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay.
Yes, you can hear me.
Go.
Thank you. So the U.S. is very closely following the situation. We are actually very encouraged about the action that NATO is undertaking. NATO has prepared a statement. It will be released very shortly. It will be a very strong statement condemning the attacks, expressing solidarity to our allies, and taking action. So we are very pleased about the progress that NATO is doing. We have also called upon NATO to bring together the defense minister for a special meeting at the North Atlantic Council in Brussels. So we are seeing great progress with NATO moving forward. We have also simultaneously worked with our partners in the UN Security Council to hold a meeting at the UN Security Council to discuss this. I think on all levels, multilaterally, we're moving forward, we're making progress, we're showing that we're taking this seriously and we're taking action. So I want to say to our dear allies, Turkey, that any kind of unilateral actions, I think at this point would be very unfortunate. I think it's very crucial that Turkey comes back to cooperate with its European partners, with the US, with NATO. So I would very strongly encourage Turkey, as it's facing this difficult time, to
Mr.
work
President,
collectively.
we want actions.
We stand
Mr.
behind you.
President,
One more thing.
we want actions.
One more thing that I want to emphasize is also any potential use of tactical nuclear weapons by any countries would be in clear violation of international law and something that should not be considered at all at any point. So we very strongly want to send that message to all parties, including all of the members of the UN Security Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. England? You can kill him.
I just wanted to open my statement by saying it's been wonderful working with all of you, and courtesy of the unilateral action that Turkey is currently undertaking, I'm very confident of the fact that my population will shortly have me renounced as Prime Minister, and there will be a new Prime Minister here working for you, representing the UK. As the US has pointed out, any kind of nuclear strike is against international law. The UK, I hesitate to use the word pressured, but has come under a lot of, has had a number of conversations requesting our support for this type of attack. We appreciate the fact that we have been brought into the conversations. To repeat to the rest of this table, the UK's response was that we will support such an action on the proviso and on the specific satisfaction of the condition that the targets of any kind of attack of that nature can be evidenced in a court of law. The attribution has to be watertight to the point that every single nation can defend it. And to go back to my opening statement, I think some of you may well have worked with Tony Blair in the past. I cannot support an action of that nature without going out to my populace and requesting some form of referendum. I'm more than happy to request an exceptional referendum or an exceptional decision to take that. I agree with the fact that action needs to be taken, but I am bound by my political system. I am prepared to do that make that exceptional action if I am provided with evidence that I repeat again, can be supported in a court of law. My concern is that this is going to transcend into people's personal fights with no real evidencing of exactly what the motivation. I go back to what I said at the beginning. We still do not know who they are. It's not just an it is a they. We do not know who these people are. I appreciate that it's going to take a lot of time to find out exactly who that source is. The next step that we can take is to look at the motivations. This has not been a surprise attack. There have been 14 days worth of propaganda. It's escalating in a certain way. What is the ultimate source of that escalation? We can be taking all of these preventative actions, but actually, whatever that final action is the thing that we should be preventing against, and we should be working towards finding that out. I'm happy to support coordinated actions ahead of that, but not unilateral actions unless they are supported by evidence that can be fully attributed.
Thank you. Israel.
Okay. First of all, if we compare the current situation to the situation during the first round, there has been some escalation already, initiated by the adversary. And we don't know who they are yet, but by the other side. So this is a fact. And we do understand, and some of our cabinet people were suggested to us to be careful and not to by purpose or by mistake, not to accelerate more than it is required at this moment. However, we still think and we still believe that this is a new era. This is a time where acceleration is with almost no time. So if response maybe just a little bit late, it will be a catastrophe. So we need to prepare ourselves, and we need to be able to launch a reaction attack every single moment. Okay, now the biggest problem, which was clear even before the game, is that we don't know what the source of the threat, what the source of the attack. This is a problem. What I have learned in my cabinet is that I almost have no chances during the period of time of this war to identify the source of the attack. In other words, if we use only the technology means in order to identify the source of the attack, it might take long weeks, like 4 to 6 weeks. And this war, this event probably will be over within 8 days. So it is not relevant. It shifts, it moves actually, the center of gravity of our effort is to try and to identify the source of the attack by using alternative ways, such as human intelligence or other kind of intelligence rather than technology and normal, internet or whatever, technology. That's one thing. Yet, we don't think, and we don't feel confident that we will be able to identify the source of the attack at the right time. This brings us to the biggest dilemma. In our cabinet, we were discussing the option to retaliate maybe before even identify 100% what is the source of the attack. This is a very complicated decision, very crucial, very delicate. We know that. But on the other hand, if we don't do that at the time or at the last minute, it might be a catastrophe. So we are ready to consult with our allies what to do and how to deal with the dilemma. Yet we believe that at a certain point we will have to do something. Now, if we do anything, the question is what to do. Either to do a counter cyber attack, that's one option, or the other option is to do a physical attack on one of the targets which will be selected. The advantage of using cyber is to take the weakest linkage, which is we don't know what the source is, that if any one of our ally group will do the attack, the other side or nobody will know who have responded, who actually executed the attack. I mean, you flip up, the problem. We don't know what is the source of the attack, but nobody will know who responded. So I would suggest this at this moment as a dilemma. And I think not only the game, and I feel like that the game is pushing out to a point where we have to decide what to do, but also when I think about the possible reality, this probably will be a major, major dilemma, what to do, at what time, against whom, and in what way. There is no doubt that we have to do the preparation. When to launch it is maybe another or maybe more crucial dilemma.
Thank you, Israel. And Portugal.
Thank you. I would like to using the previous statements from Britain and Israel, UK and Israel, I would like to frame our reflection in restating that what has been said. We are facing a major dilemma because of answering what to do against who and in which time. So from the first moment, for the first part of the game until this, and in the second part, we still don't know who they are. So to whom should we retaliate? That's something that we don't know. We know that that we are in an emergency because there are already casualties, there are, let's say, instability in the public opinion. The political stance, the political agents are already nervous, and they have to make public declarations. So the point is that we still believe that the source, we have to have a joint effort. And the joint effort needs to have two steps. The first is, in order to answer, to solve this dilemma. The first is to understand to who are we going to, what kind of situation are we facing to. We don't know yet. There are different situations in different countries. And this requires to bring together at the same table or same level all the relevant information in order to at least to have a first approach to the problem. We don't have, or at least we didn't feel, we have still a first approach to the problem. Who is behind? What are the motivations? What are the channels? What is the origin of the attacks? Are they connected? Are different sources? Is ISIS the franchise or whatever? What is behind? So we don't have that understanding. And this requires to be at the same table, and that didn't happen until now. The second is, once at least an approach to the solution has been achieved, it needs some level of coordination for devising some urgent actions in order to mitigate what is going on. As it was said, it may be important to rush on the let's say the minutes and the hours count after some time. And we felt from the first part to the second part of the game that escalation was happening, and so urgency was required in doing something. But doing something means doing something that can be effective in order to mitigate what's going on. So we believe, and this was the key hypothesis that we rise at the end of the first part, and which we worked through the second part of the game, was that the lack of cooperation, and more than that, lack of leadership for that cooperation was required. It was the problem, was the source, the real source of the problem. So solving that dilemma required that some level of leadership within the existing platforms should appear, should be constituted. We heard in the first part a comment that we don't need more platforms for cooperation. We need better cooperation within existing platforms. So we tested that hypothesis. So within, we offered in a very humble position as a UN and a NATO country member to coordinate an urgency meeting for gathering all the existing information and intelligence in order to try to approach, let's say, a minimum level of understanding for the problem we are experiencing, for the threat. And this is what the first part of the proposal. And the second part of the proposal to our partners and allies was to act, to devise some level of action in order to identify the origin, the source, the channels, and to try to mitigate next steps of the threat escalation. We were very, very clear on this offer, saying that we were just available to do that. Only 2 countries from NATO and the UN were able to answer to our proposal. Simply to say, and we were very clear on that statement, yes or no, accept this proposal. And only 2 countries, by the way, France and Germany, 2 of the countries that were more heated by a number of, or a larger number of attacks and impact of those attacks. So we came to the situation in which 2 countries, the most heated by the crisis, were. I'm being slowly only to everyone to understand what was, and I will come up to the conclusion. Only 2 countries accepted, and we started to work on that. All the other countries or did not respond, or responded with a question, say, how that urgency meeting would work. And by the way, our friends of NATO restated, and we were happy to hear that NATO was the platform for managing the coordination. Yes, we agree on that. But the problem is that what kind of leadership NATO needs in this kind of crisis. And I will end in a minute. What we observed in last part, that was events unfolded, conflict escalated, countries were just looking to their specific problems and realities with not whatsoever any kind of effort for trying to find a common ground for seeking a solution for the crisis. And probably came to our mind that the platforms that we built for, let's say, the business as usual problems in cooperation among countries, international cooperation, diplomacy, and security, may not be definitely appropriate for solving this kind of crisis. And we probably need a major reform on our institutions for solving these problems, because existing institutions, existing spaces, spheres for cooperation that were devised for different kind of problems are not suitable to this crisis and to these problems. That's our major conclusion and our major message, our major learning from this afternoon. I would like to, and in name of our team, Portugal team, I would like to congratulate the management and also to thank you all the cooperation among the participants, because it was a very, very interesting afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Portugal. I told you I am working for Portugal. The management. NATO.
I think in the second iteration, the Secretary General realized that although he believes, well, Turkey is fighting hard to maintain its posture, although Turkey is the actual cause for many of its recent problems. So maybe Turkey needs to calm down a little and try to figure out its problem with the Russians before it, drags the entire continent and NATO, to its back door. Portugal, if I start with Portugal, I agree that if NATO is the aircraft carrier, which as an institution it takes a lot of time to turn, welcomes bottom-up initiatives of countries that were hurt, like Portugal, and feel that they can take the initiative and the leadership to start changing and offering some reforms. It doesn't have to be from the top down, and maybe that's something that we need to consider. Because the institutions take a longer time. NATO wasn't available to all of its members because NATO is working hard, the Secretary General, to convince the members to take proaction in the current situation. And not all countries agree, because each of the countries has its own agenda. So obviously the countries that were hurt more are pressing to be proactive. The countries that are still, in the clear are not so keen. So we did manage to come to a joint agreement on the fact that we need to be proactive. We've already started and enhanced operations, as we said earlier. We are trying to get an agreement to invoke Article 5, which will enable us to also put boots on the ground when needed and to drive the situation with ISIS to a resolute manner.
Thank you, NATO. France, what about the boots on the ground?
Well, thank you. Well, before we talk about boots on the ground, I'd like to thank Portugal for volunteering to coordinate intelligence gathering and sharing, because as my colleague has mentioned, the first focus is on mitigating the risk because we are under attack, and the response that we might consider in boots on the ground, as far as we are concerned, comes next. Right now we've had two attacks on our nuclear reactors, one which was a cyber attack and another one which was a physical attack on nuclear facilities. And I think it's very important that in addition to the various crisis management groups that we have developed in each country, we have some way of sharing information faster, intelligence information, in order first to anticipate the next attacks and manage to mitigate the risk, and then in the second time do attribution. So before we consider putting boots on the ground, I think it's very important to figure out who is actually behind the attacks and whom we are going to target. Because we've been busy fighting these attacks, I'm sorry, Turkey, but we haven't really had time to figure out some kind of resolution to express our solidarity with Turkey being attacked, but that also might come next. And as far as boots on the ground, I would like to express some concerns that France has as to the form it takes and the legal arguments that are made and the tools that are used, because the last thing we want is to implicitly convey the idea that ISIS is actually a state. As far as we're concerned, ISIS is not a state. It's a non-state actor gathering different groups, so it's very complicated. The last thing we want also, and we have to be very careful with this, is while we are trying to eradicate the danger, that we don't feed the long-term causes or roots of the problem. If we are striking with nuclear weapons, for example, we're going to kill a population that's much larger than the ISIS soldiers, and we're going to create martyrs, and this is most likely going to reinforce the internal threat that we're facing in our countries. So these are the 2 points that I'm really worried about. First, sending the message that ISIS might be a state actor and that we're using the tool of international law that are reserved for state actors. And second, that we increase the status of martyr that they're working on, and that is the basis of their propaganda.
I'm not sure I realize the linkage, I understand the linkage you made between boots on the ground and state actors, as we invoked Article 5 against Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and we went to the
Well, I'm
roots of
also
where they were
referring to the
operating.
discussions we had with the Russians and
Okay.
the Chinese, who've been talking to us quite extensively before. So we want to be very sure that whatever the response we have, first we know that we're targeting the right actors, and then that we're not conveying that message.
China.
Hello again. So, in the second iteration, we found it very disconcerting, if not disturbing, to see the level of discoordination, the lack of coordination rather, at the level of the community of states, the international community, for a threat that is, it's cyber, that's true, but it's also, if we believe the reports that this, and the intelligence reports that this is attributed to ISIS, then there is an actual entity on the ground. I refer to our initial bilateral discussion with Russia when Russia first raised the option of tactically nuking eastern Syria. We understand Russia's position, and we also understand Russia's sense of why Russia feels the need to take such drastic measures as these. At the same time, we believe that there are other ways about this, and these feeds in very, very intimately to the lack of coordination and at the strategic, let alone the tactical and technical levels within NATO, let alone between NATO and other power blocks, regional blocks. So in lieu of that, instead of that, I believe we managed to convince the Russians to, instead of nuking them tactically, to take this up in concert with the P5, to take this to the level of the UNSC, the United Nations Security Council. We approached the French and the British. The Americans, as we heard from President Obama, agreed to the idea as well. And in this, amid this current, I mean, it's clear that there isn't a clear response to a threat such as this, as the one that we've seen in the last hours. But it's a threat, I stress, it's a transnational threat of the highest order that needs to involve, the response to which needs to involve all states. All states. And for that purpose, invoking Article 5, NATO, it's all nice and well. You can't even get your own house in order. You know, I'm not. I would probably extend it. I would probably expand the circle of intervention to include the states that, I mean, all states that matter, which is basically, you know, all of us. Which is why we China propose to take it up to the UNSC level, and instead to invoke Article 42 of the UN Charter to potentially employ armed force against an actor that is not dispersed and an actor that has physical presence, surely in Raqqa and also in Mosul and Sirte, at least these three places. We know where they are. We don't preclude the use of armed force, but we need this unity of purpose, and we strongly emphasize working multilaterally, as I emphasized at the end of in the previous discussion, the panel. We all have a common adversary, and we need to have a common response.
Yeah, Yata.
On a pure operational basis, we have asked air traffic control authorities and civil aviation authorities to let us know how we can shut down the airspace in so many countries at the same time. And so what we are doing with the aircraft that are flying. So we are far from the boots on the ground. We are taking care of the aircraft.
Yata, you are very short. Thank you. Russia.
Russia welcomes the comments of our friends and allies in China. We also welcome the comments by the Prime Minister of Israel, and we underline the fact that we have to act quickly, decisively, and effectively, something that we haven't seen in this session. What happened to Russia in this second session is that the situation became even more dangerous and more painful for the people of Russia and globally. And we worked with China to bring a UN Security Council resolution to evoke to evoke the possibility of our use of force against the real nests of terrorism, something that we were unable to push. There was a very confusing and ineffective response in the West, in Western countries, without providing real solutions to the problems that we are facing. So Russia made it clear that if multilateral efforts to tackle this menace would not bear fruit, we will act unilaterally, including introduction of tactical nuclear weapons. This is how gravely we see the situation, and this is how we provide real solution to the table, something that we didn't see from our counterparts. This would be understandable as we came under real physical attack. So we will join a UN Security Council session, but we call all stakeholders to act with resolve and with effectiveness in this session, such that we're able to address the threat that we are facing.
Thank you. United States, do you want to add something short? Because we are going to put our boots on. Yes?
Well, the United States, I think we have expressed our opinions, so we stand behind our previous remarks.
We did. It's a cyber problem. England? Yeah? Short?
Having heard all of the countries' comments, a reflection to some extent, a personal reflection, which I know is not allowed, but my personal thoughts are, in terms of a solution going forward, possibly some form of emergency legislation that
It's Turkey.
Possibly some form of emergency legislation that gives emergency powers to existing platforms like NATO, potentially like the EU, or certain countries. If something like that were in place, which the UK has for UK emergencies, we have the Civil Contingencies Act, I can rely on that, I can use that without doing an exceptional referendum. If there was the equivalent of that, I suspect other countries are bound by the same thing. If there was the equivalent of that, we could potentially rally together and take action much more quickly for some of the other with the other countries that couldn't do that.
Thank
My
you.
attempt at a solution.
Ben support. First of all,
The way I see things, very briefly, is this. We have a situation that has become more complex than it should be. Why? On the one hand, there is a very separately organized issue of sustaining Islamism in Western societies as subsidized by Wahhabi and Salafi forces, personified by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, etc. They were not intending, like Dr. Frankenstein, to create the monster. But the monster was created and now they don't know what to do about it. That's one. Unrelatedly, there is a situation where there are Muslim communities, and I'm not criticizing Islam, please. There are Muslim minorities in all these countries, France, Germany, and England, where by some coincidence, these ISIS phenomena are creeping more than other places. If we bring the two together, and they're not necessarily linked, but if we take it in the same time, we find out that there are certain, what we call in statistics, surrogate variables, things that stand for other things, that appear not to be related, but they are fundamentally related to what's happening. So there is an issue of readiness. How can we assure readiness in concert? Who is involved? The stakeholders, who are they? And is there a there there? So we have to, first of all, get our act together. We were not able, with all respect, Portugal, I didn't feel that we were getting there in this game. And despite the very nice opportunity to meet and talk and discuss, we were ineffective. And I'm sure that in real time, people are ineffective as well. So we have to really do our homework and be prepared and try to find out who the stakeholders are and how we can create this conversation, ongoing conversation, not on a brush fire basis. There is a crisis, buses are overturned here, people have their bank hacked somewhere else, and the relationship, mostly imagined, may be coincidental, but that the fact that the Israeli central bank has its accounts hacked, that the Dimona place is attacked by the electricity goes out, that the Russians are doing this, it shows a capacity to strike that is far, far, far beyond the capacity of ISIS or anybody that would claim that capacity. So let's be real, let's not panic, and let's do our homework, and then let's come and play.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Who else? We're finishing, yeah? We finish? So, thank you, Avi Marmon from the Technion, the president of Technion, Professor Marmon, please.
Okay. להגיד או לא להגיד?
And one for the
I
manager.
wanted to make, שומעים אותי? שומעים. I wanted to make three short comments. One is, as a simple-minded engineer, I found many of the sentences here too long. And there were two little points of directing to action. Now, the second point is that assuming the intelligence around this table is much higher than usual politicians, I assume this will be the case in reality. Much talk and little action. So what I am advocating is not waiting too long and attacking, but not necessarily by force. There are many ways of attacking systems, not always by force. And this is related also to what the UK representative said. People who make decisions, especially important decisions in daily life, they have to decide under a lot of uncertainty. There will never be a situation that you can have full certainty that can stand in court. So by nature, it has to be the decisions without it.
That was my way of getting out of being pressured, by the way. That was my diplomatic answer
So
to
now
saying
you have been
no.
exposed.
Let's put a condition in there that no one can satisfy.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Eric. Finishing. Bye.